in 2015. I also said, Mr. Speaker, that the CIP, they made $442.6 million in 2019. There was also the hurricane relief or the roof program. I understand from my own estimation, looking at how many passports were issued, the government collected close to $1 billion from the passport relief fund, hurricane relief fund. And you want to tell me, with all this surplus and surplus and surplus that the Prime Minister has been saying that we are getting year after year, we have to go and borrow money at this stage? I mean, I don't think that this is right. Because we just can't gloss over it. We need to know. And then I made mention of how some of the funds are being used. Take up some of the Social Security money and you're paying people. Instead of you using government money, you're taking Social Security money and paying people and call it a stimulus of the government. That is no stimulus of the government. And now I mentioned the peace initiative. The peace initiative, I said it has reduced crime by 22%, and I commend that. I am not knocking any politics here. If it has happened, it has happened. But people must know that it has cost us money. And what fellows are asking me, they're not certain that they're getting all of their money. They're the ones saying it. They're not certain. Because people who are paying them look as if they're getting paid as well. And they are public servants, some of them. So we need to know these things. The Prime Minister came here last year. He said, I want the Parliament to support this initiative. Give me $12 million. I'm going to spend all in 2020. I understand, it's an election year. So all was spent. Well, I hope so. I ain't seen the figures yet. I hope I'll see. But people want to know, did the guys really get $12 million? And then, in this estimate, it now moves from one head in the estimate, from under national security. It's now moved to the 06, which is right from 05 to 06. It's the same program, same capital project. It now moves all of a sudden, it skipped from 05 to 06 in the office of the Prime Minister. So I must ask question, because it is more. This time, the project overall now is an additional $31 million. 12 separate from the 31 have gone already. And now we have been asked in this Parliament to allow 10 of the 31 to be expended in 2021. And that is where all this confusion is. They don't want me to say it, but it is a fact. It is what is in the budget. This is what came from the clerk of the House. These documents I'm reading from, is they give them to me. I am making up anything. I am speaking as they are, facts, but they don't want to hear it because they don't want to give any account for how people's money is being spent. They don't want to practice transparency. But when you look at the preamble of the budget, the message from the minister, he says, I want to be more transparent. I want to be more accountable to the citizens of the country. And yes, he boiled me down. I can't talk inside here. I got a right to talk. And now I want to move on, Mr. Speaker. Because, you see, when you're taking a decision to recommend borrowing, after I worked my tail off together with the financial secretaries who were with me, brought the debt down from 180% of GDP, went all to France, sat in a meeting with Frenchmen, Englishmen, begging them to give us debt relief. Asked Janet, she was with me. Hours we spent, left our homes, our hotel, about 7 o'clock in the morning in Paris. When we get back home, nearly midnight. Eventually we got it done. They gave us debt relief. And after relieving the debt from the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, now I am being told in this budget, we're going to have to go and borrow again. Come on. I need to get an explanation. Not after you tell me you have all this surplus. I left $1 billion in the treasury. I can tell you. I will tell you. That's a different story. Because you should know. So, Mr. Speaker, the decision to recommend public borrowings is especially worrying to me personally. Why? I was persecuted. And if they were able to prosecute me, they would have done it. Everybody, oh, Douglas put the country in debt, that. Yes, the country went in debt. But you can see around the country where the money was spent. And I asked him about $31 million, and nobody wanted to answer me with their forwardness. And so, Mr. Speaker, I am again asking where the money has gone. It took, as I said, great ingenuity and hard work by the last Labour government and considerable sacrifice by our people to bring our debt within manageable limits and to maintain positive cash balances. I remember Mr. Speaker, after the IMF saw we had so much money, don't pay them off. Now, these fellows say that they pay off the IMF. We don't pay them off. No, they said they pay them off again. As if people stupid. You understand? We pay them off. And now they come here and say they pay off the IMF. It's like they said they remove the VAT on medicine. What medicine? VAT. No medicine on VAT for years under Labour. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to make the point. But I must be good. I'm Douglas. Mr. Speaker, the point that I must make here is that we No, you're not. I'm just recalling something. I remember when there was so much money there, successful IMF program. All over the world, people calling me to speak. How did you do it as a small country? And we created the Land for Debt initiative that brought the debt down. We negotiated long-term arrangements with a lot of our creditors. And they understood what we were doing. And that is why it is worrying, as I said, when I have to hear that we are going out there and borrow again. You know what the IMF were trying to do with us? They said, with that kind of money that you are bringing in from the SID and from the citizenship program, we want to insulate your economy. We want to insulate your economy from future crises and challenges. That's what they said. I have here, Mr. Speaker, you can see it. This is dated the 23rd of January, 2015, just a few days before we left office. It's coming from the Financial Secretary. and it is addressed to me, a minute, with the document attached. Working paper on citizenship by investment for review. And you know what this paper was doing? Zinzu, he must have been the vice president, I think, of the World Bank. Ahmed El Ashram and Judith Gold, who was our program manager here in St. Kitts and Nevis with our program, wrote this paper. And you know what they were suggesting to us? This windfall that you have, you can't go and squander it. You need to put it into what is called a sovereign wealth fund. Because another crisis is going to come. And when that crisis comes, you would have billions set aside to deal with it. Yes, I'll give you a copy, definitely. And that is why it is unbelievable that in 5 years, when we were being told to establish a sovereign wealth fund to insulate your economy from future shocks, nobody knows, nobody knew that we were going to be in a crisis so quickly in 5 years. Nobody could have expected that. And that is why I believe, Mr. Speaker, that we are right in asking the question, give us a proper account of how the monies that you had, how they have been spent. Mr. Speaker, the decision to contract new debt should not be a one-sentence passing reference in the budget address. It should be a topic of its own, and it should have full details of the financial circumstances that give rise to the need to borrow and a proper justification for such borrowings. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, this should be an agenda item for discussion in the annual budget consultation before it reaches to us here in the Parliament. It is a decision that could dramatically change course of our country. And it is important that our people, that they are fully informed and are given the opportunity to express their own opinions. Mr. Speaker, during the period that I served as Prime Minister, the country that I love dearly, it faced many crises of natural or external origin. And I learned a very important lesson, Mr. Speaker. I want to share it here today. I learned that economic growth is the single most important factor in the quest to overcome a financial or economic crisis. Growth, economic growth, Mr. Speaker. Without economic growth that generates more and more resources for our people, the budget exercise only results in shifting money around from one program to the next. In other words, unless the overall pie grows larger, then the cutting of a bigger slice for one sector only results in a smaller slice for another sector. And I want to make this point, Mr. Speaker, because there is no sharp and concentrated focus on growth in this budget that will guide our recovery, so it says, for 2021 and beyond. It is only an exercise of moving funds around, and that is why I'm concerned. There is no sharp and concentrated focus on growth here in this budget, Mr. Speaker. The small business sector is a powerful engine of growth. And most economies, and that is why this sector is and has been singled out for COVID-19 relief in most fiscal stimulus packages around the world. In St. Kitts and Nevis, this sector is in dire straits, and some enterprises in this sector may not survive the crisis that we are currently confronting. They need working capital, Mr. Speaker. Working capital. They are starved of working capital. And they need help in meeting their bank commitments. Many of them have been thrown out of places that they were renting to do their businesses. Landlords are no longer accommodating them with a raise. They are sending them to lawyers, pay up or get out. They need capital. They are starved of capital, Mr. Speaker. And they need help in meeting their commitments. At the end of the moratorium that the financial institutions have offered some of them, they may not even be in existence, Mr. Speaker. This could be a significant challenge to the financial sector. I urge the government to carefully examine the needs of this sector and to devise a comprehensive financing program to assist in overcoming the challenges of this terrible pandemic. The government will find that their effort in this regard not only help these entrepreneurs, but it would also contribute significantly to employment and growth. Employment and growth, that's what we want at this time in the economy. Mr. Speaker, if you look at page 41, in the budget address. Bear with me, page 41 in the budget address. And, Mr. Speaker, looking at paragraph 79 dealing with international tax governance. We are concerned, Mr. Speaker, that with all that is happening in this particular sector or subsector, we could be in further trouble. The developments in the financial sector could also significantly affect growth. A few weeks ago, we came and we dealt with the Income Tax Amendment Act. And this, I want to submit today to this Parliament, could potentially address some of the concerns of offshore entities currently registered here in St. Kitts and Nevis. But this act also imposes income tax on the worldwide income of all companies that are resident here. This could encourage even local enterprises from operating here to move their money and their management teams to other jurisdictions with more competitive tax regimes. This action, which I understand because it is the workings of the global financial community, it could also become a disincentive to foreign investors interested in direct investment in the real sector here in St. Kitts and Nevis. It is therefore essential that the Income Tax Amendment Act be accompanied by comprehensive tax reform, Mr. Speaker, aimed at making our tax system much more competitive internationally. And don't tell me it can't be done. We are living in the age of creativity. We have to find a way of getting it done. I was hoping to see some elements of a tax reform program in this particular budget, because we simply, Mr. Speaker, cannot risk any flight of capital with the associated negative impact on growth in the midst of the COVID-19 crisis. Mr. Speaker, even as our economy reels under the impact of COVID-19, we must use the downtime to ensure that we are enhancing our own competitiveness so that we are ready to take advantage of new opportunities that arise when the global economy shakes off the impact of COVID-19 through vaccines and other scientific developments. The financial assistance that we give our workers must be accompanied by training and development to enhance their own capabilities in customer service and other work-related skills. We need a collaborative effort, Mr. Speaker, between all of our training institutions and places of employment to ensure that we continuously raise the level of competence and efficiency of our workers in order to prepare them to take up new challenges in the post-COVID economy. We also need to channel, Mr. Speaker, more resources into the key sectors of the economy. We need to reach out to offshore education institutions. We need to provide whatever assistance we can reasonably provide in order to help them operate at full capacity as urgently as possible. I give this Parliament the benefit of my advice and experience. We need to ensure that when people around the world begin to travel again, after being so restricted for such a long time, that they would have heard of the many wonders of St. Kitts and Nevis and would have put our federation on their priority list for international travel, Minister of Tourism. And this requires that even now, as we look to the global deployment of vaccines for relief from the coronavirus, we commit more resources to tourism marketing, and we work in conjunction with our hotels to develop various promotions aimed at attracting, Mr. Speaker, more visitors to our blessed federation. All tourist economies around the world are devastated by this crisis. Mr. Speaker, this is a serious crisis. A serious crisis, Mr. Speaker. But we cannot assume that in the post-COVID world, market share would remain the same as in the pre-COVID world. Tourist economies will get up to speed at different rates, but those who move first I warn those who move first and most decisively would have the greatest likelihood of increasing their share of the global tourism market. I truly expected that this year's budget would have allocated the resources necessary to prepare our tourism sector to move forward decisively and preemptively. Mr. Speaker, the failure of the budget to focus on growth in short and medium term is its major shortcoming. I can only call it as I see it. I am not here just to criticize. I think I've had the experience of being the Prime Minister of this country for 20 years. I have met people. I continue to be in touch with people. And I really believe that we should have been focusing on growth in short and medium term. And it is the shortcoming of this particular budget. And even as we engage in the wearing of face masks and the social distancing to counter the coronavirus and to protect the health of our people, Mr. Speaker, we must also sharpen our focus on economic growth and employment to secure economic recovery and to protect the livelihoods of our own people. It is, Mr. Speaker, I emphasize, it is economic growth that has secured for our country the dramatic rise in the standard of living of our people since independence, especially during the period that I served as Prime Minister. In 1995, when I assumed office, I was faced with an ailing sugar industry, you remember, and I was promptly greeted by Hurricane Louis, which was devastating to our own infrastructure, and which was followed by a number of other devastating hurricanes that escalated the public debt and put the livelihood of our people at risk. It pained me, Mr. Speaker, but that was the situation. I understood that economic growth was our salvation. That is why we brought an end to the sugar industry. Could not continue to support a money-losing industry. And we did so through collaboration with a number of international donors and a creative set of strategies that minimize the economic fallout from our transition out of sugar. We felt that the closure of the industry would have freed up considerable resources for us to use in other sectors of the economy that had much greater potential for growth. 180% of GDP was our debt. You know what it cost us to service that debt? And after the exercise was completed, then you saw growth in the economy. Mr. Speaker, it is our pursuit of economic growth that led us to develop an international gaming industry that generated considerable income for our economy and created hundreds of jobs for our people. It was because of our pursuit of economic growth that pushed us to allow National Bank to offer credit card processing to the global economy and thereby earn hundreds of millions of dollars of foreign exchange for our blessed country. Pursuing growth, I don't see it here in this budget. It is our pursuit of economic growth that led us to establish an accreditation board and create a climate that was favorable to the establishment and growth of the offshore educational institutions. They came under the Simmons administration. We expanded. More came. We invited more. I remember my personal meeting with Dr. Gadam of Windsor. And in a matter of time, his school spread from 10 students to over 500 students there in Hermitage in Keogh. Brighton. Personal contact. People trusting in you and having confidence in your ability to deliver. I remember meeting with Dr. Ross, going to New York, meeting with him. I remember when the violence first started among our young people. Had to go there, assure them we will resolve the issue, put in place the patrol vehicles that we have. Went to each of the business community here, asking them to contribute. This is gold we had in our hands, which we could not allow these people to walk away from us. It is our pursuit of economic growth that led us to pump, Mr. Speaker, more and more money into tourism, into agriculture, into manufacturing, and other key sectors of the economy, even when we were saddled with debt and financial resources were scarce. We never gave up on trying to grow the economy. It was our pursuit of economic growth that led to the introduction of the land for debt swap that has been so maliciously maligned purely for political purposes. The land for debt swap was not intended to give away anybody's land. National Bank and the government formed a company. Not 1 square foot of land could have been sold to anybody unless the government agreed to it. The land for debt swap was not intended to give land to National Bank in exchange for any debt. Never. Never happened. It was placed into a company owned by the government and the bank to develop the lands. Anybody who would come and wanted to develop the lands, they were checked out, they were credible, then we would develop the lands with them. All that was said was very political. But it's okay, we've moved on. You have the government, take it. But you don't know what to do with it for the benefit of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. It was intended to provide the opportunity, Mr. Speaker, for our people to buy the lands. Ask the IMF. I negotiated. I said, listen, we have enough money now to buy back these lands, bring them back to the government. Because they didn't belong to the government, they belong to SSMC in the first instance. And so they told us, no, you can't do that, because you just engaged people in a debt restructuring exercise where people were asked to give you a long moratorium and significantly reduce interest. And so it was not right, because some of those same people, especially in Trinidad, they were asking for us to give them land for the debt. We said, no, you can't get our land. Tell them I said so. Ask any one of them. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, the monies from the sale of the lands would have been used to pay down on government's debt at National Bank. Mr. Speaker, the net effect of the land for debt swap is that the government's debt at National Bank would have been transferred to our people, and in exchange, they would have received title to the lands. It is as simple as that, Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding the complications of legal documentation. Now, a lot of those people who got a piece of land 5 years ago, they got auction off the land now. Next week, they say. That should not happen. That should not happen in this country at all. Especially now. That should not happen at all. You can't take poor man land and go and auction it because he ain't pay. Everybody in the country ain't paying. Everybody in the country not paying. Things hard. Things hard. You can't go and take away nobody land. Can't do that. And I tell people that if you take away their land, it will be social unrest here in St. Kitts and Nevis. You can't do that. You have to give people time to find money. You can't go and auction off a man's land. You crazy? Come on. Then you go back to where you were 50 years ago. Only certain people go own land in this country. No! It must never happen here. Mr. Speaker, so the net effect, as I said, is that the government debt at National Bank would have been transferred to our people. And in exchange, they would have received title to the lands. It is as simple as that, notwithstanding the complications of the legal documentation. People have lands. I agree they should pay for their lands. But don't treat them like common criminals. Everybody owe people today. You just said a while ago, you borrow. You said it. You have the right to borrow. So why is it they can't have the right to borrow and give them some time to go on the land? It is unfair. We also implemented, Mr. Speaker, a land distribution program to provide lands to other citizens who did not previously own lands and who may not have been able to afford the lands that were being made available through the land for debt swap. We felt that with title to the lands, our people would have been empowered to pursue a range of projects that would have contributed significantly to economic growth. And we have no apology to say to people, this is your land, 4,000 square feet at least, pay $100, and if you can begin to build, build. I know where I come from. I understand what it means not to have a home, not to have a piece of land. This government that I led was about empowerment of people. You can't now come and tell people that because you're out of power, somebody going to take your land. Mr. Speaker, they have a right to. They have a right to. Mr. Speaker, the land distribution program was to provide land to citizens who did not previously own lands and who could not buy from the land for debt swap. We felt that with title to the land, our people would have been empowered to pursue a range of projects that would have contributed significantly to economic growth. Mr. Speaker, it was our pursuit of economic growth that led to the redesigning and marketing of the Citizenship by Investment Program, which at this moment, I understand, is a program that stands between our country and total economic collapse. All of a sudden, you could now get a passport for saying worth $25,000. If you have a good friend and he say he live with me, he could come in as well as a member of your family. That kind of nonsense is what is going on. Our passport means nothing now. After all, Mr. Speaker, $25,000 from $450,000 to $25,000 US. And if a guy come and say, he's my brother, you could put him on as what is it, a next of kin or whatever, and he can get a passport as well. Absolute nonsense. We did not expect that our country would depend on the citizenship program in perpetuity. That is why, Mr. Speaker, we were in the process of establishing a sovereign wealth fund, which I mentioned earlier, which we expected would have had no less than US $1 billion, and which, through prudent investment, would have provided income that would have financed growth, enhancing projects, and would have acted as a buffer against crises such as the hurricanes, the global economic downturns, and the pandemic that we currently face. We would have been well suited out and ready to go. Unfortunately, the government has gone on a spending spree, and it seems that this is no longer an option. The government is now proposing to contract new loans. Mr. Speaker, I will spend the last few minutes to share my experience. With this Parliament. Because you see, if we do not develop a strategic and growth-oriented approach to our economic recovery, we may find that long after the world is free of the coronavirus, our economy remains in a state of disarray. I therefore urge the government to rethink the allocation of resources proposed in this 2021 budget. I urge the government to give more focus to economic growth. Team Unity has done a good job in implementing showy projects that could catch votes. Of course, catch votes. But they have not implemented any significant income-earning initiative. And that is a fact. They simply continue to milk the citizenship by investment program, but they will not be able to do so in perpetuity. They need to pursue new and substantial growth initiatives. They are not expected to come up with all of the ideas, but at least they need to consult with more people from all walks of life. I hear numerous brilliant ideas as I walk through our streets, but there is need to be formal, broad-based, and continuing forum for dialogue that could generate ideas for the government to choose from. You are the government. Choose whatever you want. You are the government. But at least hear the ideas from people. Mr. Speaker, this budget, it provides many opportunities for me to make political points. But I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that, Mr. Speaker, mainly because we are in a crisis. This country is just theirs as it is mine. But that is not my mission here today, to score any political points. I am truly worried, Mr. Speaker, about the pandemic and the social and economic impact it could have on our people. I urge the government to give careful consideration to the issues that I have raised here and to refrain from viewing my presentation from a political perspective. No, I am a proud Kittitian Nevisian. I love this country. Mr. Speaker, I make my contribution out of intense desire to help, out of love for my people, and with solidarity with them. May it please you, Mr. Speaker, Thank you.
Thank you, the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 6, the Right Honourable Dr. Denzel Douglas, with your response to the budget address of the Minister of Finance. Honourable members, you would have, with the 10-minute suspension, you would have been due to finish at 1:35, so it means then you would have spoken.
I should continue. No, man, I have much more. Look, yeah, I have.
Trust me, I've only put that on record because the question was raised by the member. So,
Yes.
So you did have some time left.
Yes.
Honourable members, we'll now have an adjournment for lunch, and we will resume at 2 p.m. This Honourable House stands adjourned until 2 p.m. today.
Speaker, with your leave, I rise to present the appropriation bill for 2021, and more properly styled, the appropriation 2021 bill 2020. As has been said in the first reading, the bill is intended to provide for the services of St. Christopher and Nevis for the financial year commencing the 1st of January 2021 and ending on the 31st of December 2021. The bill, Mr. Speaker, we're having some lighting challenges.
I think it's more than mic, maybe lights also. Probably we should suspend. This Honourable House stands